It's cold. Okay. So today, you all know Cary Nelson. Cary is the professor of liberal arts and sciences and professor of English emeritus at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He's affiliated with the University of Haifa and the recipient of an honorary doctorate degree from Ben Gurion University in Israel. Today, he's going to be speaking on issues of anti-Semitism in higher education since October the 7th, 2023. And also we're fortunate that Cary is a faculty member of ISGAP. So the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can you hear this? It doesn't sound like much.
Maybe this one will be better.
Okay.
Sorry.
How about that? There we go.
Cool.
Okay. So I gave this presentation to Group B this morning. I realized that Group A is the really distinguished group, so I feel very lucky to have graduated to this. And I opened this morning by saying that I was very glad to be part of what is really a well-run, interesting enterprise here at Oxford. And this is 4 hours later. I haven't even changed my mind yet. So I'll still say that I'm glad to be here. Less glad, perhaps, to be talking about the state of higher education since October 7th, 2023, because there really isn't a hell of a lot of good news to offer. In fact, I think part of my job is convincing you of that. I have come to believe that all of us are inevitably, to some degree, in a state of denial after October 7th. For one thing, we simply cannot dwell mentally in the space of those who endured the horrors of October 7th. We don't have, I think, the strength, the psychological strength, to put ourselves in their place and share their experiences any more than we would if we were talking about the Holocaust. I always tell my students, because I taught Holocaust poetry for many years, I said you couldn't. No matter how hard you try to share that experience, you couldn't share it unless you believed fully that there was no future, that the world of the death camps was your world until the end of your days on Earth. There was no escape, no alternative, no universe that you could escape to. And for those under assault on October 7th, it was somewhat the same. Many of them knew they would die, that they were being overwhelmed by forces beyond them, forces better armed. And although they couldn't have understood this at the time, there were unsettling parallels between the Holocaust, the death camps, and the pogroms on the 7th, in part because the Holocaust was always an uncanny combination of organization, trucks, trains, Zyklon B, staff, a lot of industrial scale organization that was combined with myriad opportunities for awful individual cruelty. Concentration camp guards in that highly organized structure in the death camps nonetheless had times to devise their own sadism and indulge in their own sadism. And on October 7th, Hamas fighters carried out acts of face-to-face malice that are really impossible to comprehend. I have I have an historian, a friend of several decades, who we all usually disagree about almost everything. And he said, no, that's not true. This, and this happened on October 7th. We understood the things that were done. We understood the things that happened. And therefore, we understand what there is to understand. But I don't think that encompasses the human dimensions. And that's the world that we are now in. We confront, as Jews, a simultaneous anti-Semitic rupture across multiple domains. Obviously, in our assumptions about Israeli security and the reliability of Israeli intelligence estimates. Over the physical threats Israelis will confront going forward. Can we really be certain that something like this, something different, of course, but something equally malicious won't happen again? Well, we really don't know. We are now once again thrust in the midst of complete uncertainty about the limits of unchecked human violence. We knew that from the Holocaust, but we largely forgot it. We didn't think it was part of our lives. Unchecked, unregulated, monstrous human violence. We thought it was in the past. It obviously isn't. Over our status as Jews in the diaspora, the status of the future of a Jewish homeland, and of course, over the depth of incipient anti-Semitism hiding in our own backyards. The flood of anti-Semitism that consumed the campuses of the West, can one say in the wake of 10/7, when it began, while 10/7 and 10/8 were still ongoing? It wasn't an aftermath. It was an outpouring really simultaneous with the events themselves. And it couldn't have happened unless it was lying in wait. The events of 10/8, our events, couldn't have arrived ab ovo, born out of nothing, imposed suddenly from other circumstances. They had to have arisen up from our midst. That's what happened, and we have to take that lesson and recognize that there was more hatred in our communities, I think, than we guessed. We really did not know. Israel didn't know what Hamas was capable of. We didn't know what our friends and neighbors could think, what they were capable of. We already were on edge from time to time because of the Pittsburgh and Poway murders in the US. There were moments when we were poised for something equivalent or worse, but we did not expect what happened throughout the month of October and in the fall, and then even more so what happened in spring 2024. In 2023, in the first reactions, the absolute commitment to blame Israel for everything Hamas did perhaps originated at Harvard. That was the first moment, 30 student groups signing on to that principle. But it spread like a virus across the planet. It spread across the United States, it went to Canada, it went to the British Isles, and then across Europe and even into Asia. I learned from young Chinese faculty member who's here that, there were no encampments in China, but she said, well, we replaced it with virtual encampments. On the internet, there was a non-stop homicidal hostility in the airwaves toward Israel. So no encampments, but they did their best. We don't want to fault them for failing the challenge of anti-Zionism. The intricate, obscene, intimate brutality sustained for hours cannot really be understood in detail. It's more like a horror movie of some kind than it is like a series of events, despite my historian friend saying otherwise. Nonetheless, we have to try and understand it. I at least, and I think many of us do, feel a moral responsibility to approximate some of what victims experienced. Fear for themselves and family members, efforts at self-defense, surprise and shock, anger, excruciating pain, disbelief, often all those things intermixed. And those descriptive categories themselves are maybe too familiar, too cliched to be adequate. When I try to write about it a bit, I feel the relentless pressure of the inadequacy of my prose. It just falls short of the reality. It seems flat. Despite that fact, that prose is necessary. And there is a wonderful, I think, prose account of 10/7 itself, and that's the very detailed report that Lord Roberts of Belgravia and his team, which includes people here, a couple of people on that team, produced for the British Parliament. It's 300 pages long, 8.5 by 11 pages, very tiny print. There's a lot in that 300 pages, and it is a triumph of objective reporting, a triumph of objective reporting. It's free online. You can download it, print it out, and it's the place to start. If you want to try to understand the totality of 10/7, read that report. It doesn't give you the emotional trauma of those who were its victims. It doesn't attempt to capture the mindset of the Hamas terrorists. It's factual. It's what an objective, linear account can be, and therefore it's not the only thing we need. It's not the only kind of account we need, but it's a terrific place to start, and we really owe them and that team a debt of gratitude for producing that report. I have two copies, one that I underline and one that I keep pristine so I can go back to an untouched version frequently. So there are many other things to read, but I really think that's the place to start. We don't yet have the books about 10/8 and beyond, about what happened on the campus. I am completing one myself, and that will be the best one. So at least that's at least reassuring that the best one will be out soon. And we have the ones that are not so good, from amongst others from our Jewish friends and allies in the BDS and the anti-Zionist movement, who started to produce books of the sort, claiming, first of all, that this was a necessary revolutionary act, and then we have some people like Lara Sheeha, formerly of George Washington University, now at Doha University, for whatever Doha University really is. I'm not too confident in its quality. And she says that we have to stop romanticizing what it means to throw off the yoke of colonialism. We have to stop romanticizing what revolutionary violence necessitates. And Hamas is our lesson. We have to embrace all the details of the Hamas assault, hold the butchered babies up to the light and celebrate them. Anything less than that does not recognize the redemptive character of revolutionary violence. So that literal embrace of what happened is continuing. Some of it was immediate. Some of it was within 24 hours of the news of the Hamas assault reaching the United States. Joseph Mossad produced, of course, an essay in the Electronic Intifada, about 8 pages, and he celebrates what Hamas did in intricate detail. I don't think he'll be drifting toward Zionism anytime soon. So then what happened in 2024? It began in late April, the encampments on American campuses. There were quickly about 100 of them, a little more than 100 actually. Eventually, about as many as 150. Some of them lasted for many weeks. Some of them lasted for really a week or less. But they spread. They were in Canada within days. They started in the US, then they were in Canada. Then they were in the British Isle, 36 of them in the British Isle. 11 of them in Australia, 9 of them in Japan. Basically, every major Western country had some versions of them at numerous campuses. Some countries only had 1 or 2. Brazil had 2 encampments, but at its major universities, so they got a lot of publicity in the Brazilian press. But 1 in Kuwait, 1 in Jordan, all within 3 weeks of the first one at Columbia. Within 3 weeks, this had spread across the globe. And they replicated one another. These were tented encampments. There were many other places that had anti-Zionist demonstrations. Of course, major cities, London had one anti-Zionist demonstration after another, non-stop it seemed. Tokyo demonstrations, Berlin demonstrations. That's in addition to the encampments. They all chanted the same thing, translated into their own languages. The chants were duplicated across the globe. What that means, I think, is that for the first time in our lives, we had a worldwide anti-Semitic movement. A worldwide anti-Semitic movement. You might think that had happened before, but I'm not aware of it. And it was preceded on American campuses in the fall of 2023 by the most rapid politicization of the faculty in our lifetimes. And I refer to the emergence of Faculty for Justice in Palestine, completely allied with Students for Justice in Palestine, and devoted to criminalizing and othering Jews, Zionists throughout higher education. I will offer pride of place. I believe that the Faculty for Justice in Palestine chapter on my own campus produced the most malicious agenda and manifesto of any in the country. My favorite moment is the section that says, if you're a member of FJP and someone asks you, you're a faculty member, and someone asks you to serve on a committee at the university, and you realize that there's a Zionist on that committee, you make it clear you won't sit down at a table with a Zionist. You won't discuss the university with a Zionist. You'll say, hell no, that committee's not for me. I wait for the moment when someone coming up for tenure does that, and what difficulty we can subject them to. But obviously, tenured faculty are going to get away with it. Tenured faculty are going to get away with it might be the theme of higher education going forward. I'm going to present today mostly some of the problems that we face, and tomorrow I'm going to give putatively a talk about solutions, although it's hard to come up with solutions that will actually work. We can come up with solutions that can be worked at, to which we can devote ourselves to, but being confident that they will succeed is another matter. But I think to do that, we should highlight what is our single worst, most serious most definitional anti-Semitism problem in higher education. And I have no doubt whatsoever what that problem is. It's departments that have devoted themselves to radical anti-Zionism. By radical anti-Zionism, I mean Zionism that's determined to see the end of the Jewish state. Eliminationist anti-Zionism. It began, of course, with academic disciplines. 2013, the American Studies Association, Native American Studies Association, a couple of others. I'm sure it's a source of inner shame that the Women's Studies Association took 2 years more, 2015, before it signed on to an even more aggressive anti-Zionist commitment. How can they possibly explain the shame of that 2-year delay? But there it is. And then in 2021, there was a major change in that pattern, a definitional change. Academic departments began to sign similar statements. There's a big difference. The disciplines started in 2013. The departments that often represented the disciplines locally started in 2021, and then in 2023, in the wake of 10/7, the number of departments signing on increased dramatically. And of course, the disciplines signing on offer a lot of intellectual warrant to faculty members to teach from an aggressive anti-Zionist point of view. If you're a women's studies faculty member and the discipline says that Israel is an apartheid state, that Israel is unredeemable, that Israel is a racist enterprise, it tells you, you have good reason to teach that way. You're not breaking with the discipline. In fact, in one of the many errors of judgment that the AAUP has made over the years, numerous AAUP leaders say what counts as the truth in a discipline collectively is what should count as the truth for an individual faculty member. And you judge a department, the AAUP says, you judge a department's veracity by whether it hews to the disciplinary truth. So it's a good English department if it hews to a disciplinary truth of anti-Zionism. That's the model that the AAUP suggests, and that then carries over for faculty members. How do you fire a faculty member who speaks the truth of his or her discipline? It presents you with really a huge administrative problem. But a department issuing a formal statement in favor, committing itself to anti-Zionism, makes a much more claustrophobic and damaging commitment. So you go to that department first thing the next morning, and basically it says, Jews not welcome here, Zionists not welcome here. That's the banner that conceptually hangs over the department. And there became many, many, many of them doing that in 2023 and continuing complete commitment to it. Those departments are the source of the most radical anti-Zionist organizing on the campus. They brainwash their students into anti-Zionism. They teach, of course, anti-Zionist courses. And they are almost beyond any imaginary route to reform. There are departments, we have some, again, on my own illustrious campus, where every single faculty member made a point of signing on to those anti-Zionist manifestos. No exceptions, They brought back the dead to sign on to them. They wanted to imagine no history of their department that didn't include that commitment to anti-Zionism. So how do you reform that? You think you can go to Columbia's program in Middle East Studies and tell its faculty, career anti-Zionists, that they ought to be more, quote, balanced in their teaching? What would Joseph Massad say if you told him he had to be more balanced? I guess he would say, "You mean you think I've been too easy on Israel?" You can't improve the damn things. I mean, they're a source of poison on our campuses, and they represent the most intractable problem about higher education. That's what they're teaching. They're graduating students and sending them off into the world harboring those beliefs. I'll suggest a partial solution tomorrow when I talk about solutions, but it doesn't make me happy. It won't make me happy. It's just, I think it's the dark fate that we have to accept as our own about what to do with those programs. There are myriad other things that we can do that I think can have a positive impact. I think adopting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism is an important advance. It begins with, a few sentences defining higher education, and there are a dozen other options for short paragraphs defining anti-Semitism, and they're all okay. They have strengths, they have weaknesses. It's worth learning about all of them, but no one of them is perfect. I mean, the IRA's definitions, sentences are not that much better even than the JCA's. But what the IRA definition does do is offer 11 examples of contemporary anti-Semitism. Half a dozen of them focused on anti-Zionism and Israel, and they offer an excellent basis for discussion. So students who are faced with the somewhat chaotic reality of anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic statements, they get a classification system. So this falls under number 7 in the IRA's list, and then you can talk about it. Is it anti-Semitic? Is it not anti-Semitic? There are statements highly critical of Israel that simply aren't anti-Semitic. They're giving the Israeli government a hard time, which it often enough well deserves. And there are other statements that are disgusting. So the IRA definition gives you something educationally, if you're willing to use it, that I think can improve discussion on campus, can improve intelligence on campus, can help students discriminate between different kinds of statements. The opposition continues to lie about it. It says that, that the IRA definition defines everything said against Israel as anti-Semitic, when the IRA definition does exactly the worst, actually the reverse. That's the Joseph Goebbels technique. You keep repeating a lie over and over again, and guess what? People believe it. People still believe that there were 500 or more dead at that hospital in northern Gaza, even though it's been supposedly corrected. They believe it. They believe it for all time. So the lies about IRA will persist. So that's a good example of something productive that you can do if you can win the battle. But then ask yourself, pose this challenge. On one side is the IRA definition, and on the other side are 6 anti-Zionist departments that are indoctrinating their students day in and day out. And ask yourself which voice carries the day. That's why the anti-Zionist departments are so intractable and so powerful compared to anything one can offer in reverse. The IRA definition will not combat that force. We need anti-Semitism training on campuses, and again, it can help. It's education, and it can help. But it's not going to counter the effects of hate speech. It's not going to counter the algorithmic effect of disseminating hate speech and saturating students' private lives with hate speech. That's why we face a problem that really is immensely difficult. And yet, we have to take it on. After the encampments spread across the world, and in some ways, I think of the last 2 years as 2 years devoted to astonishment. I was astonished at what happened on 10/7. I was astonished at the way campuses responded. I was astonished at the willingness to embrace Hamas violence. I was astonished at the massive spread of anti-Semitism, and at the level of student and faculty response over the next 2 years. I think that's in large measure the world that we're in. I think that after each of the wars with Hamas, the ground level, the bottom level, the beginning level of anti-Semitism on American campuses increased. The bar was raised. The level of acceptable anti-Zionism increased. Strategies were added. Techniques were added, and then they stuck. They lasted. Well, we've raised the bar again, and the bar has been raised so that the baseline character of anti-Semitism is hatred. It wasn't hatred before, and the baseline character of anti-Semitism is relentlessly eliminationist. My astonishment, which I can't seem to get rid of on numerous fronts, includes the fact that the encampments included no arguments for the two-state solution. Arguments for the one-state solution were few and far between. I mean, I'd spent years debating the two-state solution with students and colleagues. How many years? I spent 20 years doing it. A good chunk of time in a lifetime. Not after 10/7. Israel was a reprehensible entity that had to be eliminated. So that also was part of the new bottom line, the new base level of campus anti-Zionism that Israel needed to go. It couldn't be redeemed. It couldn't be fixed. It needed to be eliminated, and therefore, why talk about a two-state solution? As many people observed, the date in question after 10/7 was no longer 1967, no longer the conquest of Gaza and the West Bank, which was, at least in principle, a reversible historical event. Gaza and the West Bank could become something else. They didn't necessarily have to be Israeli properties going forward. So that was 67 was a reversible date. The date was now 1948. No one talked about 1967 anymore. And 1948 is only reversible by an eliminationist project. You can only reverse 1948 by ending the Jewish state, and that, for the most part, became the new date that people focused on campus. And of course, there were, lots of posters about 1948, and there were slogans. We want 1948. We want that date reversed, that change. That also was part of the realities of campus anti-Zionism going forward. In addition to debating the two-state solution year after year after year, and that now seems like some sort of delusion on the part of myself and my friends that we were doing that. It's all gone. The other significant change affecting years of ink spilt, is the supposed distinction between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. God only knows how many times, how many hours many of us have spent trying to parse that distinction, right? Here's where anti-Zionism crosses the line into anti-Semitism. Here's where the difference is blurred between the two. Here are the characteristics they share. Well, forget it. The line is gone. It's erased in the sand. They've become identical. They've become interchangeable. And that's yet another difference that 10-7 has made, and that is really quite disruptive to campus discourse going forward. So you have that collection of changes that changes the nature of the conversations we can have, including even the willingness to have conversations. I mean, anti-normalization, you don't need a fancy term for it. If you think the only solution is getting rid of Israel, what do you need to have a conversation for? You need to get a rocket-propelled grenade aimed at the right target. You don't need a chat. You don't need to convince anybody of that. It's an historical fact to which you have a commitment. So that's the package of things that we are facing, along with now FJP chapters that mean that in addition to anti-Zionist departments, we have a faculty mechanism for anti-Zionist interdepartmental collaboration, for anti-Zionist interaction and planning and strategizing across departments. We haven't really had that before. I mean, there have been some faculty senates, including Columbia's, that have gradually been taken over by anti-Zionists on the faculty, just as like many professional organizations have gradually been taken over. That's part of the long march through institutions that we've been living through, and that we haven't fought successfully, because it can be fought. You can put up alternative candidates, you can fight for them. It just depends upon how devoted you are to that. And our enemies are very devoted indeed. But FJP makes it easy to collaborate at the campus level amongst faculty devoted to an anti-Zionist future, not just for their own departments, but for the campus as a whole. And I assume that there will be more departments signing on to anti-Zionist manifesto. Have we seen the last department to do that? I don't think we need, delude ourselves about that. So that problem too is getting worse. And if we can't address it, we simply can't move forward. We have to rethink the character of academic freedom. Academic freedom was defined with great eloquence by the AAUP in 1915. I like to take credit for it, but I was very young at the time and really couldn't be much involved with the AAUP decision. Anyway, if you read, you can get it online. The short term for it is the AAUP Declaration, one word. That's the title. It's a little stilted in its language sometimes. I mean, it's a little formal, and the concept of students ain't quite like today. There wasn't much of an internet in 1915. Television was yet an idea in someone's brain, and radio wasn't really out there. So it thinks of students as like these little naive bumpkins coming off from the farm who don't know anything except that farm animals fornicate. So they have that intimate knowledge that the city dwellers don't necessarily have. But it's a naive model of students, and of therefore in loco parentis. But it's pretty good on academic freedom, and it really defines academic freedom for the future. The definition ain't much like what is circulating now. because gradually what faculty members decided, and there's no surprise in this, is that academic freedom is about their rights and privileges. It's designed to protect their integrity. It's designed to protect their freedom to do as they damn please, including in many areas where it has nothing to do with it. What the 1915 Declaration says is that academic freedom was established as a collective social good. It was designed to help the society to organize the search for the truth. Faculty members get protections because they're devoted to that search for the truth. Permit me to say that there's some departments that don't seem to me to be devoted to the search for the truth, or at least any truth that I'm capable of recognizing. So we need, I think, to return to that sense of academic freedom as a collective social good, not as a privilege for individual faculty members. And there are a number of corollaries that includes. You may have noticed that one of the trends in tenure cases the last few years, when the tenure candidate is a rabid anti-Zionist, convinced that Israel is an evil enterprise, and writing books or essays that promote that thesis. And in the course of an academic review, you might have some people saying, well, you got any evidence for that idea? Have you proven that thesis? You know, there are some people who don't believe that. Are you debating with them? Are you engaged in a conversation with colleagues around the country and around the world? Or are you just declaring the simple fact? Well, if you're failing all of those things, then your work may not merit tenure. It may not be any good. It may be inferior work. And we're getting more commonly a response that says, by criticizing my work, you're violating my academic freedom. Well, guess what? That's not what academic freedom was put there for. Academic freedom, in fact, carries a responsibility of debate. Remember, the search for the truth. So if faculty member A, B, or C is telling lies, you're supposed to make a point of saying so. You're supposed to engage in passionate critique, not in passive acceptance of ideas that you think are unwarranted and seriously defective. Research that's second rate. You aren't supposed to accept it. It's supposed to be part of really quite passionate critique. So that's another respect in which we need to fix academic freedom to return to what its core commitments were. And that's going to take, again, it's going to take some work. And of course, the bad news is that when a colleague's work is being evaluated within a rabidly anti-Zionist department, they're going to get beaucoup letters saying, courageous work, transforms the world. If only we had this wondrous faculty member on our campus. The disciplines are echo chambers. They simply reinforce the prevailing ideas. So the normal review process in the anti-Zionism culture ain't going to work. I get reviews, detailed reviews of what I do from my Zionist colleagues, and they can be pretty picky. You haven't read this, you haven't read that. This argument is defective. They like to debate, they like to take issue. That's what academic freedom is supposed to be. I don't get, maybe some of you do, I don't get, this is the best thing since sliced bread. That's not necessarily what Zionist faculty members tell you about your work. But it is the model in a lot of anti-Zionist research. Best thing under the sun. God himself must have written it. And the whole system is set up to reinforce that, right? You get a packet of rave letters that all say best thing since sliced bread, and then the college says, look at that. Maybe we should give him an award, not just tenure. Maybe there should be a statue in his or her honor. So the peer review system, both at the publication level and at the faculty review level, is in trouble. It's become dysfunctional. Another nightmare project to take on, because it's going to mean multi-department involvement in those reviews. It's going to mean more departments reading work, bringing themselves up to speed about the state of disciplines, and being willing to be engaged with it. If you stay within the echo chamber, then the echo chamber will be self-replicating and self-reinforcing from now until the end of time, and no bloody good. So it's quite a daunting series of tasks. I haven't painted the most cheerful picture imaginable, but there's still work to do. You get to advocate on these matters. You get to fight for what you believe. You get to try to build faculty coalitions. There has been historically damn little support for Zionist faculty. Zionist faculty have mostly been, hanging by a thread on their own. Plenty of support for anti-Zionist faculty, and a good deal of support for Zionist students. Hillel, Chabad, a fair amount of support for Zionist students, and they can feel reinforced. They can feel themselves part of a community. There really has not been that for faculty members by and large, and they need it badly. They need more national support, and they need more local organizations. Since 10/7, we've built a faculty organization for 2 Illinois campuses, Champaign-Urbana and Chicago, Faculty for Academic Freedom and Against Antisemitism. We have just over 90 faculty members in it. That's not all the faculty members who believe what we're doing. There's at least the same number who are too chicken shit scared to join us. I'll say to someone, you have a son in the IDF. Don't you think you might want to join this organization? I'll think about it. They're afraid. Fear can be overcome collectively, but we need that kind of work, and we need better national support. I remain despairing at the fact that the Jewish Federations of North America have decided in 2019 that faculty members aren't worth their time. They were devoting a lot of money to the faculty fight against anti-Zionism. By my standards, a lot of money. A lot of money means tens of thousands of dollars. It doesn't mean millions. It wasn't that. But they were a great resource for 5 or 6 years. Simple example, good example. In 2016 to 17, when we were fighting boycott motions in the American Anthropological Association, and I've been active in debates in multiple associations, and I've been active in them in religious groups. It's just a thing that I've done for 20 years. The federations gave us some money to do 2 things. They arranged for a filmmaker to interview Israeli faculty members and ask them what the effects of a boycott would be on their lives and on the lives of their students. They filmed them. Then they got a filmmaker in the U.S. to do the same with anthropology faculty members here. And then they got an editor to compile footage and create like a half-hour film of face-to-face testimony from both Israelis and U.S. faculty members. And then, God love them, they hired undergraduates to acquire the email addresses of everybody in the American Anthropological Association. The AAA was not careful to really protect its members from a little bit of talented hacking. So we got a little bit of talented hacking, and they gathered all the email addresses, and we sent that half-hour film to every faculty member who was an anthropologist who belonged to the AAA. And there was other money. We went to the annual meeting. They paid for travel and hotel rooms, and they paid for meeting rooms. Meeting rooms were really, private meeting rooms were really great, because that in a series of associations, English, history, anthropology, there was a place where Zionist faculty members could go with these annual meetings and work together, plan, strategize. What are they going to do next? It didn't take a fortune. It did take tens of thousands. We won that vote, not by a lot, but we won the vote. So it was a victory. And we had victories at the Modern Language Association, American Historical Association, and other groups with the same level of support from the Jewish federations. You know, that's the cumulative support is kind of beyond what ISGAP could be able to offer, unless ISGAP really had, you know, even more money than it's been able to raise. I mean, the Jewish federations are like, you know, they're not wealthier than God, but the holdings are pretty close. You know, their annual budget back then, this is almost 10 years ago, their annual budget was $300 million, right? So they could afford a little bit of cash for faculty members, and then they just decided faculty members are a loss, so we won't support this anymore. I'm still obviously pissed about it, because it was central to those battles. And they kept me running around the country doing a lot of things. So that's also something that we need to think about, how we can build support for Zionist faculty, at least the bloody level that the anti-Zionists are getting, right? I mean, we have to be competitive going forward. Otherwise, things are just going to get increasingly worse. I don't know how many more battles we can win. Of course, we lost the next vote in anthropology, and we lost it substantially. But we also had no money to fight. We had no counter campaign this time in 2023 in anthropology. You know, no filming, no going to the annual meeting, no meeting rooms, no this and that. When the MLA turned us down for a Zionist session at their annual meeting in the same time frame, the federations simply rented a big hotel room, a big meeting room, just wrote a check, gave us a meeting room. We held a public meeting, and we had really great attendance. And we had an event. Again, you know, the MLA wouldn't give it to us. We got one with Federation's help. So I'm sorry, but I'd like to take these occasions to hold their feet to the fire. It's supposed to be a key ally for us, and they need to rethink what they're doing. People are starting to raise their hands. I don't know what the hell that's about, but that's okay with me. I can stop. I'm capable of it. I have to take deep breaths and pinch myself, but it can be done.
Am I interrupting? So thank you, Cary. Thanks for your work and your assessment. There's a lot of questions.
Who wants to do the questions?
I'll do them. There should be another mic somewhere. This one's not working. We'll share it. I'm looking at Dr. Chavez, and I'm looking at Dr. Chavez. What? Okay. I'm looking at Dr. Chavez because, in a sense, what I was thinking, this is a serious crisis that you outlined. Profound crisis of modernity, ultimately, which we'll discuss this evening. And I really think it's a crisis of modernity. What are we going to do?
Well, I won't disagree with you today, at least.
Okay. Well, you can. You're welcome to. We outlined the problem. You assessed the problem. But at the end of the day, I think the ultimate question for me is, what are we going to do? To rent a room with the Jewish Federation somewhere off campus I think, is not the solution. Maybe we need to protest. Maybe we need to have sit-ins. Maybe we need to become a little bit more aggressive. And I don't know, and it's a question. And you know, I know you come from a very important background in organizing and fighting for civil rights and taking to the streets and going to prison. I mean, talk about a sacrifice. But it's like, I feel like it's beginning to dawn on us that this is a profound crisis. That our universities have been hijacked for decades. And this has now exploded after October the 7th in ways that shocked many of us. But the question I'm looking to you and I'm looking to Dr. Chavez, men of experience and wisdom, what do we do that's effective other than, you know, it's important to analyze the situation. It's very important to understand the causes of the problem. I think what we're doing at ISGAP is that we found one cause of the problem. We found $100 billion. $100 billion that have been pumped into universities for decades. And then we're scratching our heads thinking, wow, there's an explosion. It was gradual. So, like as I say, tachlis, what to do? So I'm going to ask Cary, and then I'm going to also turn it over to you for your comment.
Yeah, well, there's no silver bullet unless it actually is a bullet. There are a series of things we can do. I've listed some of them. You'll hear more of them tomorrow if you come back. You have to, or you don't get your stipend.
The what?
Yeah, right. But they have no guarantees. That there's nothing that guarantees success in this game, because we have very aggressive, very committed opponents who are going to be doing everything that they can come up with. And they might also be just a little bit unscrupulous from time to time. Hard to imagine anti-Zionists being unscrupulous, but it could happen. So it's going to be a battle, especially if we insist on being ethical. But if we do all of those things, we'll have at least a chance. But that means IRA adoption, anti-Zionist training, serious attempts to discipline or change academic programs that are sources of hate on campus, because that's what they are. There's that sequence of things. I mean, in terms of the federations renting a hotel room, well, that wasn't a transformative decision. There's a battle going on in the Modern Language Association. There's a battle going on in the Anthropology Association. Let's help our friends make a counter argument. You know, it's a modest thing that makes a little contribution to an ongoing debate. It's not a massive solution. It affects some people's judgment, affects some votes. That's all that it was. But it was still a good thing to add to the mix. But I don't have any, I'll give you a citation tomorrow to a co-authored article that I did with two psychologists on, how to fix the campus. And we give a series of A to Z suggestions. A to Z, obviously, a little artificial. We make 26 suggestions. It's in the Journal of Contemporary Antisemitism. We paid $900 to make it open access. So you can Google Cary Nelson plus Journal of Contemporary Antisemitism, and you'll come up with the article. That makes 26 suggestions. Even there, there's nothing miraculous in there, but there's a lot of ideas designed to throw into the mix and make a positive change.
Dr. Chavez.
Thank you. We've thought about this obviously before coming to this conference. You started out by saying one of the major challenges that departments have become anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist, which then determines the faculty. We know that a lot of the turmoil that went on some of the campuses also was initiated by the faculty, not by the students. So I think there are three, not exclusive, but solutions. Number one, ISGAP and our allies, we need to develop a very public, a very ostentatious center for the study of antisemitism and racism in the United States at one of the major universities. We're trying to do that at Duke University. This year, hope to be operative in January of 2026. Number two, I think that we need to highlight throughout this conference, I've heard of all the different scholars. We need to lift up the scholars who had a track record of promoting the ideals and the characters of Israel. I don't think, when you put it straight, we're going to lose if we only respond to anti-Semitism. We have to be more proactive. What are the good things that Israel has done, is doing, will do? There's no media coverage about that. You know, the demonization of Israel, the demonization of Zionism is something that has to be challenged. Last point, hate. I think I made this earlier. Hate has to be combated with love. You can't combat hate with hate. You can't combat evil with evil, because evil will always win. And I think that Hamas's evil is winning because we're not combating that evil, one, as evil, and two, I think that the Jewish community needs to have allies that you can trust and that you can know that are going to not run away or retreat when things may get a little difficult or challenging. And that is why also I'm promoting in the United States a strong relationship between blacks and Jews for the express purpose of not only having solidarity, because I think that blacks and Jews challenging anti-Semitism is more effective than Jews or blacks trying to do it separate and apart. I also think that the Jewish community should be more outspoken on racism when it happens to African Americans. I think we have a lot of commonalities, yes, different, but a lot of commonalities in our evolution as a community, as a people. And I think that we need to do a lot of different things, but those are three things I think that I'm committed to doing like yesterday. And I think that all of us should be thinking about what it is we're going to do when we leave this conference. You know, what networking, what are we going to do? And in terms of the billions of dollars that Qatar and others are spending, well, you know, yes, a lot of what we have to do has to be funded, but I would not accept a grant for Qatar to build a center for anti-Semitism and Zionism, no matter if it was $100 billion.
That may not be a problem that you'll ever have.
Right. But I'm saying principle, because a lot of times these schools are bought because they have given up their principles of why they exist in terms of academic freedom, in terms of the search for truth, and with the intellectual debate. Right now, there's no intellectual debate. There's an intellectual retreat from the debate for fear of losing your tenure, for fear of losing your position, for fear of not being considered to be department chair. And so I think we have to change that at some of these universities. I believe if we do that at one or two of these universities, I'm talking about in the United States, and then link in a consortium with other universities around the world, I think would be more effective.
No. Amen.
So I think it's wrong to say that there's nothing. I see several of my colleagues here, and including you, Cary, from the Academic Engagement Network. I'd like to read its mission. It's for those of us in the United States as well as in Canada. It reads, Academic Engagement Network's mission is to mobilize networks of university faculty and administrators to counter anti-Semitism, oppose the denigration of Jewish and Zionist identities, promote academic freedom, and advance education about Israel. It is a goldmine of information. It has provided an incredible network. The letters that we have written to administrators and our professional organizations are online. Particularly for those of you who are younger, who are coming up for tenure, please be aware that there are $3,000 awards so that you can do your work. Please understand that Diane Martin, who's just returned from Israel, in part did that through our network. So I really, with all due respect, Cary, we have to focus on the institutions that exist. I'm sorry to my European colleagues and my colleagues elsewhere throughout the world who do not have an academic engagement network. Please know that I am not related to Miriam Ellman, although we are sisters in spirit. So please look it up. It is a fantastic model. And greetings to all of you who are in the network. Karen, I see you've got the bracelet on. I've got my baseball cap with me. I see, plenty of folks who are here. Rona, I know that you're involved.
It's a great organization.
I've worked with it since it was founded. I mean, yeah.
Right. I just want people to be aware of it rather than saying that there's no network and nothing exists.
Well,
I just would hesitate using the word network until we decide what the word network means. Does it actually mean people in dialogue with one another? Does it actually mean a sort of supportive group?
The answer is yes, Cary.
I actually,
Can you
With
give
all
Lady
due-
the microphone, please?
with all due respect, I don't think so. Doing
I
great
think
work.
it
It's
does,
just,
especially for those of us who are women, right? I'm sorry, it does. We're in contact with each other all the time, and particularly the social science division, the women's section, absolutely key, dialoguing all the time. In Zoom meetings, off Zoom meetings, in DC. For those of our Christian colleagues, I wish Diane were here. 120%, Cary.
Leslie?
Hi, Cary. Thanks very much for your talk. It was very interesting. It's very different in England, of course. We don't have any control over what we teach. Every course has to be approved by validation committee. We have teaching teams, so we can't teach an anti-Zionist agenda. We don't have the same tenure track system, so we can't be denied tenure because we're anti-Zionist, or because we're pro-Zionist. I just wanted to say there's something that you have in the United States, which we don't have, is the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights and the Law. And I've been on the advisory committee for years, and I think there's somebody else here who's affiliated. You're affiliated with the Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights and the Law, and they exist to fight anti-Semitism in higher education in North America. And I think a lawsuit, as you know, I'm a law academic, but I think a lawsuit is the way to go. Title 7, Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act on behalf of faculty, you can bring the Title 6 claim on behalf of someone who is being denied tenure because they're a Zionist. Hostile environment harassment actions are very, very good at getting universities to step into line. That's my experience. Thank you.
the lawsuits have been terrific, and the reports produced by the Office of Civil Rights, which is probably gone, have also been well informed. The success at getting consent agreements has also been very high. The success at getting universities to implement consent agreements has been less spectacular. There hasn't been enough teeth in those enforcement documents. Again, I think of my own campus where They've had 2 consent agreements now, and the administration has done not a damn thing. We're trying again, but I think they're important, and they're really. It'll be important not to lose them, but they haven't had the enforcement that it may well be the federal government is beginning to exercise.
And if I may just add a comment, there's a wonderful ecosystem. Academic exchange network, the Journal of Contemporary Anti-Semitism Studies, Lawfare, Brooke Goldstein, the Brandeis Center. There's a whole ecosystem of people operating in the academic world. And it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. I think this conference is wonderful. I think the work of ISGAP is wonderful. I think academic exchange, people around this room acting even as individuals, writing, teaching, there's a lot of things going on. But we also have to look, we have to be very frank. You know, my parents, I give my parents nachas. They're proud of their son fighting anti-Semitism. But take a step back and look at the issue of power. 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 We're up against power. We are being removed from the university. Students are running out. We can't have meetings in certain centers. There's $100 billion of assets that we found. We met 180 congressional men and women and over 60 senators and all the committees. All the Title VI stuff that's going on comes from the amazing work of our legal department, our team of legal experts who are incredible, who have made a difference in the world of policy. But look at power. Both parties are working with the Qataris hand in glove. And I can go through a whole list of, you know, just in the last few months, how many Republicans and Democrats have been paid by the Qataris. It's incredible. We found $1 billion at Brown University. $1 billion. 8,000 schools across the United States of America are teaching anti-Semitic courses. The Trump administration came in with the help of ISGAP and threatened a lawsuit against them, held back I think $400 million for a while. They settled for $50 million. If somebody offered ISGAP $1 billion and we had to pay $50 million as a service fee, I'd take it. It's a pretty good deal. So is the normalization of anti-Semitism, you know, we're all scholars here. Ideas matter. The discourse of the last 40 years has been normalized and is the zeitgeist at universities. And 100,000 people marching in the streets of a great democracy of Australia, of London. I mean, we have to take a step back and writing letters and sending people to Israel and having, you know, the ISGAP conference. It's all wonderful. But just to finish, and I'll stop. This is why I turned to Dr. Chavez. The Jews helped the anti-apartheid movement. We helped the civil rights movement, or certainly elements of our community have. But we need massive assistance. We need massive assistance in numbers, in tactics, in understanding, in strategy. We need strategy. We need a tactic. Amy, I'll turn it over to Amy and then to Karen.
Can you imagine, in all the work that you've done, somebody goes out and they just ignore what you've done? I'm being as tactical as well. Thank you. Okay, I'm being tactical as well. If we spend all the time saying, for all of your schlepping around and all of our efforts here for 2 weeks, in the long run, we're still dealing with senators and everybody else, and they don't care, and they're still screwing us over. I would just be as irreverent to that. What I'm saying is, please let us sometimes honor the people in the room, even if we say, oh, you know what, you just wrote a letter or something, because we are moving, that's all. And I wanted to make people aware of the Academic Engagement Network. And actually, the Brandeis Center is, it offers legal services to you all free of charge. Where else does that happen? And it matters for us. So that's why I just did the
this ecosystem, the ecosystem is incredible, but we also have to realize the ecosystem is profoundly outgunned. Profoundly. We're losing rapidly. We're losing rapidly. we have to, Dr. Berkowitz.
Yeah, thank you. I think as much as the organizational aspect and the lawfare aspect are important, we also have to get back to the proper analysis of these academic disciplines, which are actually constructing these theses as truths, such as anti-Zionism equals racism, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a proper academic and even epistemological aspect to this, right? Because these are the disciplines that give legitimacy to these assertions, and so they are certainly based on certain theoretical frameworks. And we need to examine those theoretical frameworks and refute them. So, Professor Nelson, as you said, that the departments are echo chambers and there's no rational debate possible. Yes, this is absolutely certain. But how do we change this? I think we still need to go back to those disciplines and see what are their fallacious arguments, how they are logically flawed, and how they arrive at their consequences, right? Because this is considered something academic, scientific, on the same model as racial science was accepted as legitimate before the war, right? And as it could lead to eliminationist anti-Semitism, these kinds of sciences, disciplines, can lead to eliminationist anti-Zionism, as you said. So I think we really have to tackle in detail the kinds of disciplines that establish these as truths, quote unquote. Thank you.
You know,
So I completely believe in that kind of work, and of course, I have been doing it for 10 years, and there are some others doing it as well. So, yeah, I think that's necessary. It doesn't have any immediate political effect on the world, but it at least builds the background that you need to understand those disciplinary phenomena. It's not like, having a demonstration on a campus, or, it's a form of intellectual activism with a kind of delayed response, but it's important. It's what I do.
Cary?
Yes, I was going to bring up the academic engagement network too, just as kind of like an underground railroad type of a situation. I was at a conference in Copenhagen for management faculty, and a brand new journal editor realized that in this meeting she was going to walk into in 2 days, there was going to be this huge protest against having any Israeli authors published in that journal, and actually, like a BDS for the journal, and again, we stand against genocide, and she didn't know who to contact, so she contacted Academic Engagement Network, and they were able to put her in touch with me, and I was able to put her in touch with other people. So it's just a resource. It's not to solve the problem, but a resource. But then the other question I had for you was about AAUP, because I know you were the president of AAUP, and I think the AAUP decision this year has been particularly harmful. And just as FJP can serve as an organizing function within a university, what I found is our university now doesn't allow FJP to send out emails, but they do allow faculty to send out emails on behalf of what's happening with AAUP. So I just wondered if you had any comments about that.
Yeah, burn it to the ground. Look, I was in the elected leadership of the AAUP for the elected leadership, national leadership, for 23 years. So I devoted too many brain cells and too many hours to AAUP work. They began their shift toward anti-Zionism really in 2014, but realistically in 2015. It was back in 2006 that the AAU disseminated its really very fine statement opposing all academic boycotts. Whatever you think of the country, whatever you think of its national policies, the academic relationships and interactions would remain sacrosanct. Within 2 years, one of the main authors of the report, that is by 2008, had changed her mind and decided that academic boycotts were okay. So it's been a slow dissolution over that time. The AAUP is now lost to our definition of academic freedom. The AAUP is now an anti-Zionist organization. Perhaps the moment for me that was most decisive and painful was in 2020 when they gave this annual Academic Freedom Award to Rabab Abdul Hadi, who's at San Francisco State University and is distinguished by her capacity to turn every single element of her academic responsibilities into anti-Zionism. Her teaching, her research, her faculty hiring, her organizing on campus, I mean, everything. And so she got the AAUP's Academic Freedom Award in 2020, really a repellent decision, and one that signaled that. But you're right that the coup de grace was the 2024 decision to reverse its policy on academic boycotts. And what the AAUP said was that they are now an acceptable form of academic activism and that they represent an exercise of academic freedom, whereas its position explicitly in 2006 was that they are an aggression against academic freedom. Now they've reversed course and decided that they're a form of academic freedom. And of course, this is all about Israel. I mean, it's about anti-Zionism. It's not about anything else. That's all. And the president of the AAUP is a very active member of Faculty for Justice in Palestine. The chair of AAUP's Committee A, which is its main policy-making body, the body that drafted the original statement on academic boycotts. She's an FJP member and a very devoted anti-Zionist. And Committee A, the policy-making body, is now dominated by anti-Zionists. So that's like the Women's Studies Department at my university, which I used to work with back in an earlier life. There's no reforming of the AAUP. The only thing to do would be to run the current leadership out of office and replace them. I don't know if it can be done because obviously the members were willing to elect the current leadership. So there has to be a pretty deep reserve of anti-Zionism throughout the membership. It is, of course, the main thing to say about the AAUP is that it is now what it never was before. It's an academic union. 85 to 90% of the AAUP members are in collective bargaining. And I was a strong supporter of that. It's one of the many elements of my life where beware what you ask for is the defining motto. And a lot of those chapters are themselves anti-Zionist, that is building anti-Zionist constituencies on a campus. So given that membership in collective bargaining, given the presence of anti-Zionism in that membership, I think it's kind of a lost cause for a while. I mean, there are people who say to me, we need a new academic freedom organization, and I mostly sort of go to bed at that point because the National AAUP has a sufficient budget to hire 35 full-time faculty members to do its work. That's a lot of money, and so to create an alternative national academic freedom organization that could support anti-Zionist causes is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. It's not cheaper than that. AAUP has full-time lawyers on its staff. It has organizers on its staff. It has some clout, and an alternative organization is going to need real serious money.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to try to do an experiment in the spirit of inclusion. 3 brief questions. I'm going to collect 3 brief questions and you'll respond rapidly. So first Sabrina and Anthony and then Rona. Please be very brief.
Yeah, so I guess mine is just like a hybrid of comment and question. So I think sometimes we think a lot about this in terms of like the Israel and anti-Semitism issue, but maybe if we expand it broader to think about professional standards that are already embedded in faculty codes of conduct, there can be something else that we can do on that level. So that's something that I think everybody here should think about, because there are faculty codes of conduct, and indoctrination and harassment of students is absolutely not okay, and administrators should hold faculty accountable for that. And yeah, so that was.
Thank you.
So first, just wanted to say.
It's a sign.
Oh, there we go. Just wanted to say the points about lawfare. I think there's a lot of ideas that people have brought up in some of their other talks that could be like really practically implemented in legal cases potentially. The semi-question that I had actually was more leveraging. The question that I had, in addition to supporting the lawfare comments and saying that we should be engaging a lot more activist lawyers to come to these kinds of seminars to actually listen so that they know what they're doing internationally, is leveraging both of your experiences and anyone else who wants to contribute. How do you identify somebody who is sort of in the middle of going one way or the other? Because in a lot of these institutions, there's going to be key players who make decisions, heads of department, influential professors, something like that, who maybe haven't formed a solid view yet and haven't been ideologically captured. And you've described the process of ideological capture, but you haven't described a sufficient sort of metric for how you know when you're wasting, good money after bad, so to speak.
Thank you. And very briefly, Rona, quick question, please.
I'm just wondering about, I think others have mentioned these, but collaborating with other organizations. So AUP, we need an alternative heterodox academy. I don't know what we think of them. Also,
Yeah.
so and then for the law, I think the Federalist Society, which is an organization I never would have been part of before, but I think that they probably are the right organization right now. And then I'm just wondering why, we need to have a conference.
I'm not sure that I'm.
All that warm toward their recommendations for the Supreme Court, but
I'm also wondering whether we need, a conference, basically, one conference. Maybe ISGAP needs to organize it for all academics who are concerned about these issues to show up, because we're like all doing things individually. We need to organize, and then we need to start finding allies.
so
Dr. Cary,
On the-
Professor Cary,
on-
3 minutes.
on the yeah, brevity is not not the soul of my wit, but on professional standards, I think when you can find an apolitical foundation for arguing for a professional standard that would be transformative, that's really the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I mean, the best arguments over the last 20 years against academic boycotts, for example, have been the ones about academic freedom, not anything about Israel. As soon as you politicize an argument or a position, you lose many potential allies. So I think putting forward a case on professional standards is the best way when you can do it, and excellent. So I've surprised you by agreeing with you, and there it goes. Finding people on the fence. Well, in American life, they only estimate that there are 2.5 people still on the fence politically amongst the 330 million, but they may have been slightly off. There may be half a dozen for all I know. It's a polarized world, a politically polarized world, and it's hard to find people on the fence, but the best chance of finding them is one-on-one conversations where people don't feel collectively impelled and pressured to take a political stand, but can more casually think through an issue. And that seems, that's hard work one-on-one, but it's the best way I've found of actually reliably identifying people in that status. And the last one was collaboration. Yeah, well, when you got the time, it's a great idea. I ain't getting in bed with the Federalist Society, and they ain't asking me either. So it's a pretty safe claim on my part. I won't do that until Trump appoints me as a cabinet member. I'm sure that's happening in minutes. Secretary of Education, I'm ready for it. But I mean, in principle, yes. I mean, I will say, well, people aren't happy with my being bleak, but I've been in this game for 2 decades, and I've been at the service of organizations, groups that decide they're going to collaborate. The federations made a big push to collaboration, and we spent a lot of time. AEN has done some collaboration, and some of it's been okay. They've produced some joint statements by collaborating. That's one of the modest, unthreatening ways that you can collaborate. But NGOs are not good at collaborating. They're all competing for the same dollar. This Jewish NGO wants the dollar, that one wants the dollar, and if you move over into the Christian NGO's domain, it's exactly the same thing. The limited number of donors are being competed for, and therefore, real collaboration is very hard because it puts your income at risk. It's very hard, and so mostly I haven't been a great fan of it because that competition overwhelms the possibilities of action. In principle, for God's sake, it ought to be what you do, but it is tough.
So on that note, Cary, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for your presentation and your insights. Thank you, everybody. So enjoy the tea break and see you back in 30 minutes.